Welcome back, everyone. Well, the big attraction, and especially for Laker fans, had to be LeBron and Anthony Davis during Olympic play. They did happen to have a teammate playing as well, with that being Rui Hachimura, who actually played really well, or at least up until he got hurt anyways. And well, the only thing that we heard about it was that he had a calf injury, which was neither described as a long-term injury, nor a short-term one. In fact, we don't even know if he was truly hurt to begin with, as it may have simply been precautionary. After all, its home country of Japan were a long shot to make the elimination round of Olympic play to begin with. They were already 0-2 before Rui got hurt, in spite of him playing very well by the way, but it might have been a big risk for him to keep playing. As again, the only thing we know is that he was quote-unquote feeling discomfort in his left calf. And although it would have been pretty cool to see him lead their team beyond group play, I'm glad that Hachimura did not push it. I mean, he will be entering a pivotal point in his NBA career during the upcoming season, where he'll need to prove his worth, as he might be trending toward becoming a trade chip, and he will have to prove that he is more valuable to the Lakers team than he would be through a trade for them. But how can he do it, and what should he be working on in preparation for it, which will in fact include playing for a new head coach, and that will definitely factor in here as well. We'll break it all down. Before we get too far into it though, if you have been enjoying the everyday content, then don't forget to drop a like, hit that subscribe button if you have not already, and turn on notifications so you never miss out when I upload a video. But without further ado, let's dive right into it. And we'll begin by talking about where Hachimura left off last season, which included both a lot of good, but also a lot of bad as well. Though we'll start out with the good. And following him being moved to the team's starting lineup on February 3rd, where he remained for the 32 games they had left, Hachimura played quite well, putting up 15.9 points, 5.1 rebounds, and shooting a team-high 44.4% from 3. Pretty damn good. And not only that, but it truly did translate to good team play. The most important thing, by the way. Maybe not defensively, but most importantly to their overall record. They were 22-10 throughout that time frame, the 4th best record in the entire league, which led to them becoming a top 8 seed even with an injury-riddled team. And from that standpoint, yeah, Hachimura had a great regular season. I think the only thing I'd have to complain about would be the 3-point shooting volume. I'd like for him to eventually take around 5 to 7 of them per game, not only around 3 to 4 of them per game. I mean, if he could ever get to becoming a 40% 3-point shooter on that kind of volume, then he would be borderline elite offensively. We already know they can score 15 plus points per game, but now it's about becoming that dangerous off-ball threat, which he cannot completely do without that 3-point shooting volume. But again, great offensive year for Rui Hachimura. Him being moved to their lineup really helped turn things around for them, from hovering around 500 for well over half the season, to then finishing it by going 22-10, although being 12 games above 500. Definitely an improvement. And from that standpoint, he definitely did help their team, though it unfortunately was not all good for him. While he did take a step forward offensively, he arguably took a big step backward defensively, and he really got exposed after moving to their starting lineup. At that point, he had to take on the difficult matchup of matching up with wing players, as LeBron could not, nor should be looked at to fill that role for more than a few minutes during the late 4th quarter. And well, that made Rui Hachimura fill it, which played a part in them matching up terribly with a team like the Denver Nuggets. Simply put, they were far too slow on the perimeter. Between D'Lo, Reeves, and himself, not a single one of them are known for their foot speed, and that led to them becoming one of the worst 3-point shooting defenses in the entire league. Following February 3rd, which again is when they put Hachimura in their lineup, they gave up 14 made 3-point shots per game, the 5th worst in the entire league, although being the worst of any eventual playoff team. And that right there is a recipe for disaster, especially when matching up with a team like Denver. I know everyone likes to make a big deal about quote-unquote stopping Jokic, which you really can't do by the way, but the real problem in that matchup is the 3-point shooters around him. With Jokic being one of, if not the best half-court playmaker in the entire league right now, you gotta stay attached to 3-point shooters. And again, that was something the Lakers could simply not do, with Hachimura being the worst of them. I mean, if you go back and watch that playoff series, you will find Rui Hachimura getting beat on defense an exorbitant amount of times. Not even getting beat off the dribble, but simply not being able to keep track of a 3-point shooter, even with a relatively slow player like Michael Porter Jr. And that right there is the biggest complaint I had with him. For as well as he played offensively, he would often give it right back up on defense. And don't get me wrong, there were times when he would have a good defensive stop, but it never translated to good long-term defense. And the even bigger problem here is that I'm not sure he ever will be able to. I'd like to think that he could get a little bit better, but Hachimura is simply limited. He is a great vertical athlete, and is even pretty quick going up and down the court, but he unfortunately is not very quick laterally, meaning moving side to side on defense. Whether that's staying in front of his matchup or simply being able to track them along the 3-point line, he has never been great at doing it. And again, I'm not too sure he ever will be. Unlike 3-point shooting where you can improve through repetition, you can only do so much to improve athletically. Working to improve your vertical is one thing, but it's even tougher to improve your lateral quickness, especially for a 6'8" human being. I mean, it's already tough for an average guy like you or me, but we're talking about a 6'8", 230-pound guy here. There are people that height who can barely even run, let alone play at the NBA level. So again, that to me is the fatal flaw of Rui Hachimura's game. And no, I'm not saying that makes him a bad player, but it definitely does make him harder to fit with their team, and especially on defense. He obviously wants to be a part of their starting lineup, and I imagine that they want their 4th highest paid player to be too, but at the end of the day, he's simply not the best overall fit for it. He might be a great fit offensively, but I would argue that he is a terrible fit defensively. And with him being fairly limited in his ability to improve in that area, I'm not sure that'll ever change, which obviously is a problem. And if I had to guess, he is probably trying to slim down even more. And with him already being very lean throughout last season, I'm not sure how much more he can do. I'm not questioning how in shape he is, as I don't think there is any question about that in my opinion. I'm simply not too sure he can do much to affect the way he is at this point, referring to his lateral quickness. Again, I think there are plenty of other ways for him to improve, primarily with his 3-point shooting volume, ability to read the defense, and then becoming a better rebounder as well. But I feel like he has a fairly low ceiling on defense, which is not entirely his fault. Now, I think he could become a better team defender, aka by knowing where to be on the court defensively, but I don't think he has much room left to grow as an individual defender. I wish it weren't true, but I feel like it's who he is at this point. And with that being said, what would be the best fit for him within their rotation? And in my opinion, it would probably have to be off their bench being their 6th man, but then being a fairly regular member of their closing lineups. I think the more they limit the amount he has to match up with wing players, the better. And the best way for them to do that is by separating the minutes that he and LeBron play together up until crunch time. At that point, LeBron can and will take on the tougher matchup. I mean, he can do it for a couple of minutes, but you can't expect him to do it throughout an entire game. That would simply tire him out. And I think that would be the way to get the most out of both of them. Have a guy like Vanderbilt in their starting lineup to take on that defensive matchup throughout the game, but then turn to your most effective offensive lineup during crunch time with Hachimura, or at least in a majority of matchups anyway. And if you ask me, I think that would be the best way for them to utilize him. And in reality, that wouldn't really change the amount of minutes he'd likely play. He would still get around 25 to 30 minutes per game if he's playing well, and that was right around the amount he played last season. But with all of that being said, what do you guys think? How do you feel about the outlook for Rui Hachimura, and what would be the best spot for him within the rotation in your opinion? Let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. But I think we'll finish up by doing another brief Q&A. And for question number 1, we got one from Time to Totally Watch Cinema. And his question is, can you make content talking about other teams, not just the Lakers? Got some really good teams in the league. And the answer to that question would be that we did, but we don't really anymore unfortunately. Simply put, we didn't really receive a lot of support for it on my other channel called JSM+. I would love to get back to doing it, and maybe during the regular season again, but we're not doing it right now. Leave a comment below if you'd like for us to get back to doing it, and say what team you'd like for us to talk about. But until we get more support, we probably won't do it. And then for question number 2, we got one from Afro Pareto, and hopefully I pronounced your name right. But he said, what seed do you project the Lakers going? I'm personally leaning towards 4 to 5 seed, best case scenario if they stay with this team. And well, that one's definitely up to interpretation. You could argue them being a top 5 seed, that would obviously take a lot, but you could argue it. Or somewhere between that 6 to 8, or even somewhere below that. I think going somewhere in the middle would probably be the most likely route. They gotta stay healthy of course, but even last year with not really healthy role players, they did crack a top 8 seed, being the 7 seed, which, it did take them to the final game for them to get that seed, but they showed with a primarily healthy LeBron and Anthony Davis, who still did miss about 8 to 10 games each, they can be at that mid-tier to even high-end level. They were 12 games above 500, which is pretty good, and if they can improve, 5 games more than that, they could realistically avoid the play-in tournament. Definitely will take health again, but I think that's a possibility. But if you do factor in them getting injuries, whether that be a couple here and there from LeBron and AD, or having a few of their role players get hurt again, I think probably that middle of the pack range would be a better choice. Somewhere between that 6 to 8, 9, I think is the more likely option, and I think that's very realistic. I think it's very attainable for them. I think they have a good enough team to get there. And, you know, putting everything together and plus maybe a trade or two, I think they could be that or possibly even a little bit higher than that. But again, you got to factor in the top end teams like Oklahoma City, Dallas, Denver, Minnesota. They're all going to be good and possibly even better. Minus Denver. I think they actually got a little bit worse, but Minnesota, Oklahoma City, Dallas, they're all fairly young and have a lot of room for internal improvement. And while I do think the Lakers have some of that as well, maybe not quite as much. And from a seeding standpoint, I think it will be more realistic for them to be around that middle of the pack range. With that being said though, I think that'll pretty much do it. Appreciate the questions again, and I will get to more of them in the future. But if you enjoyed the video, don't forget to drop a like, hit that subscribe button if you have not already, and turn on notifications so you never miss out when I upload a video. But as always, thank you for watching and have a great day.